This is the ultimate Lost Media Iceberg. Created by 6 different individual people, this iceberg contains 998 entries with 8 tiers, and yeah, this iceberg is massive to say the least. Now, if you've been watching my content recently, you've probably noticed that I explain the iceberg format less and less with the more videos that I make with the format, and I don't really need to explain the way the format works, because you know why you clicked on this. Though I do want to get some important things out of the way before we jump into this, the first thing being that there's no way I can talk about some of these entries on YouTube. As much as I'd love to talk about things like this, I just can't get into the details on YouTube. Another thing is that some of my other videos have much more detailed editing work, but for this video I'm going to dim it down a little bit and talk about the most important aspects of the entries, and I'll probably put Isaac gameplay in the background or something, but I don't know. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into it. Pixar's Newt. Newt was a Pixar film that was planned to release in the summer of 2011, but was pushed to 2012 before ultimately being cancelled for having a similar plot to the film Rio. The only pieces of the film that have been found have been concept artwork as well as the soundtrack, but no footage of the film has ever been released to the public. Pixar also hasn't said a single thing about the film, so it's likely that it will never see the light of day. Gravity Falls pilot. Sometime in 2010, Alex Hirsch, who's the creator of Gravity Falls, would begin work on a pitch for what would later become the show itself. The pilot had a runtime of 12 minutes and was created in Adobe Flash, and it was essentially a cut version of the first episode, which was called Tourist Trapped. In a Reddit AMA, when asked about if the unaired pilot would ever be released, he said that it would be like showing you awkward photos from my high school prom, and that he didn't want the film to be seen. The pilot also used licensed songs that Alex didn't have the right to use commercially, which would add more complications if he ever wanted to publish it anyway. But in June of 2016, Alex said that if a puzzle that was part of an unofficial cipher hunt was completed, then he would release the pilot to the public. And it only took people around a week to complete the puzzle, and so on August 3rd, 2016, Alex Hirsch released the pilot on the Gravity Falls website. Space World 95 Demo. I've talked about this one in the past in a Mario 64 video that I made, but Space World was an annual video game trade show hosted by Nintendo, and in Space World of 1995, there were several different test demos of Super Mario 64 that were present at the event. The version that the entry refers to was called the Super Mario 64 DD version, and there was very little if anything that was known about the build before it was found, and the topic didn't resurface until a French collector found a copy of the build at a game store in Japan, and the only real differences between this version and the original game are changes to the game's music, slight texture adjustments, buggy encounters with the Wiggler, and longer loading times. Just One Bite deleted scene. Just One Bite is episode 43 of season 3 of SpongeBob, and it's the episode where SpongeBob tries to get Squidward to try a Krabby Patty, only for Squidward to realize that he actually likes it a lot. There's a deleted scene from the episode that shows Squidward knocking over a bucket in the Krusty Krab, before he realizes that it's actually gasoline and the entire establishment blows up. The original episode aired in October 2001, but the edited version that removed the scene wouldn't start airing until January 2002. The earliest re-uploads I could find of the scene were uploaded in as early as 2008, and this was probably cut out of the episode because it teaches kids that gasoline is flammable, I don't know. Clockman. Clockman was an animated short film that was initially released in communist Czechoslovakia in 1976. It originally aired as one of the animated shorts on Pinwheel, which was a show on Nickelodeon in the 1980s, being aired under the name Sally instead of Clockman. And according to people who had seen it before it was lost, the short involved a young boy laying in his bed, who then gets snatched up by the Clockman, who is a discolored, weird-looking entity that would emerge from a clock on the wall only at the stroke of midnight. And after the boy was taken on an eerie adventure, he was subsequently returned to his room before sunrise. It wouldn't be until 2016 that a search really began to find this film, and it took the search team almost 2 years to find both the Czech version and the English versions of the film. And the film was pretty much exactly how people who saw it described it, and I can really see how the film resonated with people in such a terrifying way. Crackmaster. Crackmaster, which is also referred to as Cracks, was an animated Sesame Street short film that aired for the first time on December 31st, 1975. The short gained notoriety in the late 2000s due to its mysterious disappearance from the show, with the episode being randomly taken off the air in 1980 with no official reason ever being given about why it stopped airing. The official description for the short talks about how a girl lying in bed imagines that she sees a crack in the wall to symbolize divergent thinking, which references the educational goals that the short had, based around creative ideas and by extension problem solving as well. The search for the short film began sometime in late 2008, with a man named John Armand spearheading the search for the piece. Armand eventually was able to get possession of a copy of the film from a mysterious source, but he was forbidden to share it with anyone and was to never make copies of it to reproduce it to the public. And in the years following the copy that Armand had been given, several different Latin American enthusiasts had claimed that the short had also aired in the 90s and the early 2000s on the Spanish dub of Sesame Street called Plaza Sésamo. And after exchanging emails back and forth with the Sesame Workshop as well as the archives of the Children's TV Workshop, the founder of the Lost Media Wiki was sent a copy of the original English short by an anonymous source in December of 2013. The Spanish version was found years later in March of 2017, as well as other dubbed versions of the short being found a little while later after that in 2019. Mean Girls DS Game. The Mean Girls DS game is a cancelled game for the DS that would have tied into the 2004 film with the same name, and the game was scheduled to be released in September 2009. A United States release was scheduled for April 20th, 2010, but both of them were cancelled at the last minute. The game was apparently a huge financial failure, and the game also didn't even include Lindsay Lohan in the cover, despite the major role that she played in the film. The game had very few copies ever made of it, and the game had at one point been sold online at least once in the past. Lots of people tried to search for this game, but really didn't get anywhere until a YouTuber named Ray Mona managed to get into possession of the ROM after many back and forth conversations with the studio who had worked on the game. She was given the ROM by an anonymous source, and for legal reasons, as well as the fact that the game is so buggy to the point where it can't even function past the first minigame, the game is unable to be shared and is still deemed as being lost. Ray ended up releasing gameplay footage of the game, as well as a full playthrough in June of 2021, and until the legal problems with this game get resolved, nobody else is going to be able to play it. A Day with SpongeBob SquarePants the movie. A Day with SpongeBob SquarePants is an unauthorized, unproduced mockumentary that a company called Regal Films is planning to distribute. The filmmaker, who is also known as Mr. Orange for privacy reasons, wanted to create a family movie that paid tribute to the John Hughes films that he watched as he grew up. He wrote an entire script for the movie and approached various filmmakers, including some people who were involved in Regal Films, but it was eventually decided that the film was going well beyond any budget that would be given to Mr. Orange. He also initially refused to make the film out of fear of Nickelodeon and Viacom's legal concerns, but after a consultation with a lawyer, he was told that he could make the film as long as it fell under parody. He was also told that it might help if it were a live action and acknowledged that it was entirely unofficial. After a lot of back and forth with suppliers as well as ongoing financial issues, the movie very quickly was born into development hell. And in August of 2016, Mr. Orange announced that a crowdfunding effort would be launched in September of that year to produce the movie, but as of me making this video, the crowdfunding effort has yet to be made. Rude Removal. Rude Removal was an episode of Dexter's Laboratory from 1997 that revolved around one of his inventions separating Dexter and Dee Dee into rude and impolite versions of themselves. This resulted in the characters being very vulgar and portraying generally rude behavior, and the episode was originally intended to be aired but was pulled after Cartoon Network realized that it might not be a good idea to air this episode of the show. The episode was screened at several conventions in the late 90s before being almost completely forgotten about until the 2010s. Before a search to find it really started taking off, everybody assumed that the episode was fake. It wouldn't be until 2010 when a former president of Hanna-Barbera Cartoons confirmed the episode's existence and said that the episode was pulled after consulting with the creator of the show. And it wouldn't be until 2013 when Adult Swim started becoming interested in trying to find it, and a couple weeks after they said that they had obtained it, the censored version of the episode was uploaded onto their website, though the uncensored version is still lost. Lost episodes of Doctor Who. Between 1967 and 1974, a collection of 147 episodes of the original Doctor Who TV series were wiped by the BBC, which included the first 11 seasons of the show. And of the 147 episodes that went missing, only 50 of them have managed to be found over the span of nearly 50 years since the episodes were junked by the BBC. Of the 97 episodes that are currently missing, there's only one episode that is believed to have no chance of recovery, with that being the episode The Feast of Stephen, with these screenshots being the only surviving media that exists. Crybaby Lane. Crybaby Lane was a Halloween-themed comedic horror film that originally aired on Nickelodeon's television block Snick on the night of October 28, 2000. And after it premiered on television, it was never released on any form of home media and didn't air outside of anywhere but the United States. The movie's about how two characters named Andrew and Carl conduct a seance in their local graveyard in an effort to impress a group of girls, but unknowingly end up releasing the dead soul of a Siamese twin. The film's original criticism also apparently resulted in Nickelodeon at one point claiming to not even own the film, and that the airing of the movie was completely done by accident. Speculations about if the film was actually real were all over various different forum sites, but it wasn't until 2011 when a Reddit user named Fire Salad Peach claimed to have had a bootleg VHS of the film recorded on the night of the original premiere. And sure enough, she later released the film on YouTube, and a sudden spike in popularity might have also had something to do with why Teen Nick re-aired the film on October 31st of that same year. Food Fight Original Version. This one's kinda sad, but Food Fight is a CG animated movie from Threshold Animation Studios, and it is considered by many to be one of the worst animated films of all time. Development for the film began sometime in 2002, and the plot is nearly identical to that of Toy Story, in that this movie was about how products in a supermarket would come to life whenever the store would close. The film included many legendary food mascots, which is where the majority of the budget went since they had to get all the rights to use them, but in December of 2002, hard drives containing the film's progress were reportedly stolen, but it was later discovered that the entire movie was actually accidentally deleted. It's estimated that around 60% of the movie was completed before it was deleted, and because of the movie's budget being nearly completely dried up, the film took on a new live-action style in an attempt to adapt to the very restricted budget at this point, and now nobody knew when the movie was actually going to come out. The remaining assets of the film were eventually put up for auction in 2011 with a starting bid of $2.5 million, and a company called Boulevard Entertainment ended up winning the assets and managed to finish the film in June of 2012. There's really no telling what the movie would have been like if it didn't go through such a development hell, but this is the final product, so think of that as you will. Toy Story Black Friday Reel. When Disney originally started working on Toy Story, the movie was planned to be targeted for adults and was planned to be released on a completely different label. The earliest version of the film, called the Black Friday Reel, was apparently much more rude, cynical, and dark compared to what it later became. The only known footage that exists on the internet is a 2-minute sample from a 2010 video called Toy Story Blu-ray Special Feature Black Friday, The Toy Story You Never Saw. And it's an alternate version of a scene from the finished film where Woody tries to push Buzz behind the desk so that Andy will take him to Pizza Planet instead of Buzz, but the only difference in this version is that instead of Woody accidentally tossing Buzz out the window, he does it on purpose. Library of Alexandria. The Library of Alexandria was an ancient library in northern Egypt that was one of the largest and most prestigious libraries of the ancient world, dating all the way back to ancient Egyptian times, and it's believed that at some point the library contained somewhere from 40 to 400,000 scrolls in it. The library was easily the largest library in the world, but in 48 BC, Julius Caesar became surrounded at Alexandria and was forced to set fire to his own ships during the siege of Alexandria, and it's believed to have directly resulted in the destruction of over 40,000 scrolls from the library, as well as burning down a large portion of the building at the time. The library was home to writings of the most prolific writers of their time, and the scrolls that were burned are most likely never going to be able to be recovered. The Egyptians at one point ended up moving part of the collection to a building called the Serapeum of Alexandria, and this is what the ruins of the building look like today. As far as the main building goes though, there's pretty much no traces left of the original Library of Alexandria. Sesame Street episode 847. On February 10th, 1976, one of Sesame Street's most controversial episodes to date aired for only one time, called episode 847. The plot of the episode revolved around the Wicked Witch losing her magic broom while flying over Sesame Street, only to have it wind up in the hands of David, who refuses to return it, and as a result, she threatens to turn both Big Bird and David into inanimate objects, being a feather duster and a basketball. In the days following the episode's airing, a massive amount of complaints were received by the Children's Television Workshop, with the majority of them being angry parents whose children had been traumatized by Margaret Hamilton's frightening guest appearance. And due to the overwhelmingly negative reception that the episode got, several additional test screenings were held the following month, but were inconclusive since the test audience appeared more fascinated by the witch rather than being traumatized. But despite the test screenings showing different results, the complaints were still enough for the Children's Television Workshop's research department to declare the episode unsuitable for re-airing, and the episode has not been aired or shown publicly in any form since. And it wouldn't be until 43 years later in 2019 when it was announced that over 4,500 episodes of Sesame Street would be archived in the American Archive of Public Broadcasting, and episode 847 was later confirmed to be a part of the catalog, but it's only available for viewing at the Library of Congress. Johnny Quasar. The Adventures of Johnny Quasar was a 40-second long demo that was the precursor to Jimmy Neutron. Created in 1995 by John Davis and Keith Alcorn, it was first shown publicly at the 1995 SIGGRAPH conference, winning 2 awards, which were Best in Character Animation and Best in Show for the Lightwave 3D engine called Wavies. The demo was impressive enough to have an eventual 13-minute pilot pitched to Nickelodeon, and the new pilot was renamed to Runaway Rocket Boy and marked the first appearance of Jimmy Neutron. The name was going to be Johnny Quasar, but they apparently changed it to avoid parallels being drawn with other characters like Johnny Quest and Captain Quasar. But despite how notable the demo was for its time, the only existing footage that exists was 11 of the 40-second demo, and the videos that did surface were very low quality as demonstrated on the screen. A lot of the original findings were found on an old DNA Productions website sometime in 1995, and a lot of search efforts were made to try and find the missing demos, but it wouldn't be until sometime in 2017 when somebody managed to get in contact with one of the original designers for Johnny Quasar, and the stills were actually early production test renders that were for the later pilot Runaway Rocket Boy that were made to help sell the pilot to Nickelodeon. The search eventually caught the eyes of Johnny Quasar's voice actor, and the character's voice actor actually ended up uploading the demos onto his YouTube channel in August of 2017. South Park episodes 200 and 201. In April of 2010, Comedy Central aired episodes 200 and 201 of South Park, which were episodes 5 and 6 of season 14, but were overall episodes 200 and 201. 201 is a continuation of episode 200, and the episode is about how Tom Cruise and all other celebrities who have been mocked by the residents of South Park plan to file a class action lawsuit against the town, but Cruise promises to end the lawsuit if the town can get the Islamic prophet Muhammad to meet him in person. The reason that Tom Cruise wants to meet with Muhammad is because Tom Cruise, along with all the other celebrities, want to harness Muhammad's power of not being able to be made fun of. And near the end of the episode, Kyle makes a speech pretty much talking about how if you don't want to be made fun of, just incite violence on the people making fun of you. Trey Parker and Matt Stone received quite a lot of death threats from radical Muslim groups over the episode, and due to intense network pressure from Comedy Central, they ended up censoring swearing in episode 200, as well as Kyle's entire speech at the end, and any audible mention of Muhammad. I'm going to play it safe for the rest of the entry because I think you get the idea, but the uncensored versions are out there and they're really not that hard to find. Astrology with Squidward. There was a series of shorts that aired on Nickelodeon in the 2000s called Astrology with Squidward, which aired during different times of the year, and in the shorts, Squidward would explain the different parts of the zodiac. The symbols in the shorts were represented through SpongeBob characters, like SpongeBob as Sagittarius and Patrick as Taurus, but the shorts stopped airing on the network in 2001, and later reappeared on Nicktoons in 2002, where they continued to air until 2005. Due to the shorts being aired in a time where both recording television and the availability of Nicktoons itself wasn't as popular as it is now, several variants and entire shorts have been rumored to be completely missing. It was initially thought that the collection of shorts was made up of 12 different zodiac signs, but it was later confirmed that 6 of the shorts already found in English were the only ones that existed in the first place. And the attention towards the missing videos was enough for the official SpongeBob YouTube channel to upload a compilation of all the shorts in February of 2020, but all the official uploads of it seem to be private. There are many re-uploads of it though, with one playlist made by a channel solely dedicated to archiving the shorts. Silent Hills. Silent Hills was a horror game announced back in 2012, alongside various other games that were going to use a game engine called the Fox engine. A teaser for the game was uploaded in August of 2014, which was called PT as an abbreviation for Playable Teaser. The demo featured the player wandering around a strange house with no immediate references to Silent Hill, but as the player traverses through the game, many odd and frightening events start to unravel, such as cryptic dialogue, the player appearing in the same rooms, the spirit of a pregnant female named Lisa attacking you, and many other things. After completing the game, the player sees the protagonist wake up in Silent Hill, with the Silent Hills title card appearing afterwards. The demo's feedback was overwhelmingly positive, but in 2015, the main director for the game, Hideo Kojima, was laid off by Konami sometime near the end of the year. It didn't take long after that for the co-director to announce that the project was officially cancelled, with the demo also being removed from the PlayStation Store. The only known footage of the game that exists is from the game demo as well as the various trailers that were released on channels like IGN, GameSpot, and PlayStation Europe. The Electric Piper. In February 2003, Nickelodeon aired an animated TV adaptation of a film called The Pied Piper, with their version being called The Electric Piper. Set in the late 1960s, the story centers around a guitarist named Sly, modeled after Jimi Hendrix, who uses his music to get rid of rats who are invading a suburban town called Hamlin in exchange for a Harley-Davidson motorcycle from the mayor as an award for getting rid of all of the rats. And when the mayor doesn't give Sly his reward, he gets revenge by convincing the children of the town to run away and join him on a mountain. The movie hasn't been seen since its few initial airings on Nickelodeon, and it was never released on VHS or DVD. For a long time, there were only ever 3 clips of the movie on YouTube, with one of the videos at some point getting taken down. The film's director, Raimi Muzquiz, had confirmed that he had a copy of the film but that he wasn't allowed to release it publicly. And really the only thing stopping it from being released was that Nickelodeon's legal department decided that it didn't have enough documentation on the music rights to safely re-release the film. They also had to re-record some of the music because of the legal department at the time thinking that the songs were too close to the other songs that they were referencing. I guess that the legal concerns eventually faded away since an anonymous user had contacted someone who worked on the film in 2016 and was able to get a VHS copy of the film to release it publicly on the internet. This was also at around the same time that a YouTuber called Stuart It's Me got a hold of a different copy sourced from an interlaced DVD master, with both of the copies making their way onto YouTube in various times in 2016. Somebody also later managed to get a hold of the soundtrack when a person named Synth interviewed Bill Burnett, and Bill ended up sending various versions of the entire movie's soundtrack, with the only exceptions being Rat Town, USA, and London on the Moon. Bill also told him that the reason the movie only aired once was because of some of the songs sounding too similar to the ones that they were parodying in the movie. Machinima. If you've been a longtime user on the platform, then you're probably familiar with what Machinima was, but Machinima was basically the first big YouTube network, and really the only way channels like gaming channels back when YouTube was much smaller could make money was by being a part of a network. If you made gaming content back in the 2010 era of YouTube, you weren't really able to make any monetary gain off of the content that you were making. So there existed networks like Machinima, who you could partner up with in exchange for money that you couldn't make if you weren't a part of a network at all. If you were part of Machinima, then your videos would be joint uploaded to the Machinima channel, and you as the creator would receive 60% of the revenue generated from the videos on the channel. And back then, this was literally the only option gaming channels had to make any money at all, so you as a creator were better safe than sorry. And this is why videos from the most popular gaming channels of all time back in 2012 had the iconic Machinima intro at the start of pretty much all of their videos. Because if you wanted to make money from gaming content, you literally didn't have a choice. Machinima's channel at one point was so large that it was the 4th most subscribed channel on the entire platform, but the network would eventually crash and burn due to the company taking heavy advantage of naive kids with really intense contracts, and also preying on the short-term thinking of the creators themselves, with some of the contracts being 3 to 7 years long. I think you can see where this is going. A lot of the creators that were getting contracts would disregard the time frame because all they saw was the opportunity to make money, and would sign these ridiculous contracts without even really thinking about it, since they didn't even know better to begin with. People like PewDiePie were only getting around $3 for every 1,000 views, and his revenue would have been around $30 million, with Machinima taking $12 million of it, and this example just highlights how damaging these contracts could be. And Machinima was also caught sneaking in extra months into their contracts without notifying their creators, with some creators getting upwards of a 7-month extension to their contract without even knowing, which is crazy. And another problem that people saw with Machinima was that since the channel uploaded so many videos a day, it really wasn't a good way to grow your channel, even if it might have looked like it due to the amount of subscribers and people who were already partnered with the network. Machinima was so successful at their operation that Google invested $35 million into it in May of 2012, but Machinima did eventually manage to fall apart, mainly due to the partner program not needing them anymore, and by January 2019, the company was purchased by Warner Brothers for somewhere over $100 million, and all of the videos on the channel were privated. Warner Bros. Still hasn't done anything with the channel, and all of the social media for it is either deleted or completely private. I guess Warner Bros. Is just planning on doing something with it, but until they actually do, we're just gonna have to wait and see. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure 2: Phantom Blood. Phantom Blood was a 91-minute film released in February 2007 that was based on the first part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. The film itself was made as a celebration of both the 25th anniversary of the creator's career as a manga artist, but also the 20th anniversary of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure itself. The film was teased in as early as 2004 at the Tokyo International Anime Fair, with the co-creator acquiring a license to make JoJo games to make a PS2 game based upon the manga to help generate excitement for the movie. The first proper teaser was unveiled at an event promoting the PS2 game, and would later be included in a pre-order exclusive bonus DVD that came with the game. The website for the game was up until late 2019 and can still be found on the Wayback Machine. Phantom Blood was only ever shown in Japanese cinemas, with its last known screening taking place on April 9, 2007, with the film not being seen again after leaving the theaters. The reason for its disappearance is not known, but it's assumed to be because of poor reception, and the studio losing the JoJo license that following year due to a religious controversy related to Stardust Crusaders, which is part 3 of the original series. Aqua Teen Hunger Force Boston. On January 31, 2007, what is now known as the Boston Bomb Scare was an event in which LED signs of a character named Moonanite were placed around Boston as a part of a marketing campaign, with Moonanite being a character from Aqua Teen Hunger Force, but the marketing caused panic and controversy after being mistakenly identified as improvised explosive devices by both the Boston Fire Department and the Boston Police. The incident led to the responsible companies being required to pay a combined $2 million in damages, plus the resignation of Cartoon Network's general manager and executive vice president Jim Staples. And in response to the incident, an episode of Aqua Teen Hunger Force titled Boston was made, but the episode was never aired due to Adult Swim's fear of inciting any further backlash that came from the incident in 2007. And since the episode's creation, it was only publicly discussed on a few rare occasions by the creators of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and the only existence of the episode was on Adult Swim's old website for the show, where the description for the episode was nothing but a question mark. The episode is said to have gone through several rewrites and edits due to intervention from Adult Swim, resulting in a total of 3 different versions of the episode, all of which were ultimately rejected to be aired. But nearly 8 years after the bomb scare incident, an incomplete version of the episode managed to get leaked onto YouTube, and it went completely under the radar for 2 months straight until several news websites reported on it, and while the original upload has since been taken down, the episode has been re-uploaded several times since then, and I want to show it, but I really don't want to risk the video getting flagged, but it's not hard to find on YouTube. All-American Massacre. All-American Massacre is an unofficial spin-off to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which began production in 1999. Intended to be a 25th anniversary tribute to the original, the film was to act as both a prequel and a sequel to the first 2 films, with flashback sections bridging the plot together. The movie went through a normal production, and despite being a completely finished film, All-American Massacre has never been released to the public. It's not fully known why the film was never able to come out, but the most agreed upon reason is due to issues with the rights to use the characters from the series in an unofficial movie, and the entire production also seemed to be unauthorized. Somebody on eBay eventually auctioned off the original film negatives belonging to the executive producer in June of 2013, but it's unknown who bought these, and whether or not the listing actually contained a copy of the movie. The only known footage of this movie that exists online is a 1.5-minute long clip from the film, as well as a high-quality teaser trailer being uploaded in January of 2020. Metropolis 1927. Metropolis is a silent German sci-fi movie that is widely considered to be one of the greatest films ever made, due to its quality and special effects for the time that it was made. The movie premiered in Berlin in 1927, and after the premiere, the film was chopped down from its original 2.5-hour runtime to be around an hour and a half to appeal to an international audience. Now, obviously, removing a massive portion of the film was an issue, but many plot-relevant scenes were cut, and it ended up making the re-release have a plot that now made little to no sense at all, and it led to film historians pushing really hard to try and figure out the film's many missing elements. No progress would be made on trying to find the film until a highly damaged copy was found in Argentina in 2008 from a film collector that somehow got a hold of a copy of the original cut. I wonder why that might be. The film was badly damaged and transferred on a safety film, and the copy also suffered a loss of quality due to it being printed on 16mm positive stock, since the original films were shot on 35mm. But the discovery of the film at all now meant that one of the largest film restoration efforts in history was now underway, with the end goal being putting all of the scenes back in their original order. It took around 2 years until the film became as restored as possible, with the now 99% completed version being put on DVD. This new version of the film is still missing 2 scenes that were too heavily damaged to be restored, but this is most likely the most complete that the film is ever going to be. Mr. Rogers talks about conflict. The 14th season of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood debuted in November 1983 with a 5-episode arc called Mr. Rogers Talks About Conflict. And based on the timing of the original airing, many people assume that the arc was made as a response to the ABC telefilm called The Day After, which featured graphic nuclear war imagery. The episode's meaning wasn't about the day after at all, but many people saw the arc as a response to the popular media portrayals of a nuclear war that were made at around the same time. The episodes are actually focused on the neighborhood of make-believe where they almost go to war by jumping to conclusions, but due to both of the episodes and news of the time involving war, the episodes were pulled from the air on April 5th, 1996. And I guess people kind of forgot about the episodes of the show, because it wouldn't be until March of 2017 when a YouTuber named Trog Sleep Now uploaded the first 2 episodes on his channel, even though the videos are now deleted. The entire 5-episode arc eventually got uploaded to a torrent website called MySpleen, being the first time that the episodes had been seen in full since 1996, and there also exists re-uploads of it on the Internet Archive. KidsTube.com. KidsTube was a video sharing website with the earliest archives of it being from sometime in 2008, with the website being fully shut down later in 2015 due to it being too expensive to run. The website was created by Sean Sansel, who is the same person responsible for the Pencilman animations from 2010 if anybody remembers that. The commercial for the website was uploaded to YouTube in February 2009, with the website at the time only having around 3,500 members on the platform. But when the platform unexpectedly shut down in 2015, nobody had any prior warning or time to archive any of the videos, so pretty much everything that was uploaded onto the site is either archived somewhere or has been completely deleted. There's really not a lot of surviving videos from the site, and I myself couldn't find an estimated number for just how many videos there were, but I'm sure it was at the very least over 1 million. Most of the content there was just random videos and YouTube poops, which is to be expected from a kid-friendly video sharing platform, and if you were one of the lucky ones who had videos on the website, let me know how that went. Star Fox 2. Star Fox 2 was planned to be the sequel to the original Star Fox for the Super Nintendo, with development beginning in February 1993. One of the earliest mentions of the game appeared in an issue of the Game Players magazine from January 1994, talking about the development of the Super FX2 chip and the split-screen multiplayer that was planned for the game. The first public appearance of the game itself was shown at the 1995 Consumer Electronics Show with a playable build for the public, alongside Nintendo's bigger project at the time, which was the Ultra 64. There was also an attempt made to steal one of the builds that was displayed at the event, but the thief was caught and the cartridge was put back where it was originally. Star Fox 2 was surprisingly not on display for the E3 of that year, with Nintendo instead showcasing the Nintendo 64 hardware, which was called the Ultra 64, back when it was being developed. Nintendo was trying to garner attention towards the transition from 2D to 3D in gaming, and not so much attention went towards the development of Star Fox 2. It was only later revealed in September in an issue of Electronic Gamely Monthly that the game had been quietly cancelled in the background. The last official word from Nintendo on the game was a false promise they had made in the Nintendo Power magazine, saying that the game's development had not only been put on hold, but said that additional gameplay features and better graphics were promised. But that would be Nintendo's final words on the game, and the game was quietly cancelled like I mentioned earlier. But as far as the game's development goes, Dylan Cuthbert said on a forums page in 1999 that the game was, from a programming standpoint, a finished game. Builds of the game were assumed to have been eventually leaked, with the earliest build being from an old ROM site called cherryroms.com, which ended up removing the game from its list of dumped ROMs in September of 1999. It turned out that the version of the game that was floating around online was an early internal alpha build, which was an even earlier version than the one that was available at the 1995 event. Other versions were also floating around online in as early as 2002, but when Nintendo released the SNES Classic in 2017, one of the 21 games on the console ended up being the complete version of Star Fox 2, and you can get to the game if you beat the first level of the original Star Fox. The game is also playable on the Switch. 75% of all silent films. During most of the 20th century, the US copyright law required at least one copy of every American film to be deposited at the Library of Congress at the time of copyright registration, but due to problems relating to the volatile structure of early film stock and intentional destruction on the part of the studios, it's estimated that nearly 75% of all silent films that have ever been made are completely missing. A major reason for the destruction was that before the era of television, films were viewed as having little future value when their theatrical runs ended, and silent films are also perceived as worthless after the end of the silent era for some reason. And it's also estimated that over 90% of all silent films made before 1929 are lost, and only 14% of the 10,900 silent films released by major studios exist in the original 35mm or whatever other formats that were used. Super Mario's Wacky Worlds. Wacky Worlds is a cancelled 1993 sequel to the original Super Mario World, and only 30% of the game was completed before the game was cancelled. The game was planned to be on the Philips CDI, and only 3 prototypes of the game are known to exist. The game was planned to take place in the real world instead of the Mario one, and only a handful of locations were finished before the game ended up being cancelled. It's not really well documented as to who ended up finding the ROMs for the game, and even though the developers didn't have much to present to Nintendo during their presentations, Nintendo was still impressed by the results. The game's cancellation is directly the cause of the CDI failing as a console, and the builds that we do have are incredibly buggy, but still functional for something that was cancelled only 30% into its production. I also got food poisoning in the middle of recording this, so that's cool. So my voice is going to sound seriously dead for the next couple of minutes. Super Y Pilot. Super Y is an animated TV show that existed from 2007 to 2016 about a kid who lives in a place called Storybrick Village. They can jump into storybooks to collect super letters, which they use to solve problems. I'm sure you've at least seen one of the characters before. The show was originally supposed to be a stop-motion show, and a pilot was produced to pitch to Nickelodeon by the creator of Blue's Clues and a studio called Cup of Coffee Studios in early to mid-1999. The pilot was rejected, but after lots of development hell, the show was released in 2007 on PBS as the CGI show that exists today. According to the pilot's director, the pilot was greenlit by Nick Jr. but was later cancelled in favor of another show called Oswald. This pilot was never released, but people slowly started to find snippets of it, with part of the theme song being found in February of 2021, and footage of the pilot was at one point available on Cup of Coffee Animation's old website. The clips on their website were from an earlier version that used an altered theme song, but the files were never archived and are probably gone for good. What's really weird is that only the audio for the pilot has been found, with the video of it believed to be permanently missing due to nobody being able to archive the videos in the time that they were up. The closest thing to a video is a collection of screenshots that were found on Slide Player in January of this year. Okay, yeah, I can't voice this until I feel better. Okay, I'm not sick anymore. Sailor Mouth Uncensored. Sailor Mouth is probably the most well-known entry that I'm going to talk about in the whole series, but Sailor Mouth is an episode of SpongeBob from 2001 that revolved around SpongeBob and Patrick swearing with dolphin sounds as the censorship, with all of the characters eventually having to paint Mrs. Krabs' house over a feud with Squidward, telling Mr. Krabs what SpongeBob and Patrick were doing. Tom Kenny has said in the past that they were told to use substitute words for swear words, but that's honestly more difficult than just actually swearing, and so the original audio consists of the SpongeBob characters actually swearing in the recordings. The audio clips have also been confirmed to exist, with Tom saying that they are buried deep within the archives of Nickelodeon. The original audio for Sailor Mouth is definitely never going to be released, but there is footage of most of the main characters in the show swearing anyway.
Come and eat at the jug bucket. Every fucking day, you come down and we'll stuff your face full of shit. They're on to you, Plankton. All those innocent people who died from indigestion from eating at the jug bucket. I killed them all, of course. Look, Regina, enough with the bullshit.
Save yourself, you dumb bastard. You could have done better.
You know, if it wasn't for the Christmas shit, I wouldn't fucking work. This is the only time of the year that I fucking work. It pisses me off. It's like, I'm glad to have it, knock on wood, but motherfucker,
You fucking cocksucker. Another shot at that little prick.
Dinoblocks. Dinoblocks is actually the original name for Roblox, with most of the builds predating the 2010s being lost. The main cause was Roblox moving their servers or removing old content from the main servers, with people not really trying to archive the clients themselves. The domains for what would soon be Roblox were bought in December 2003, and Dinoblocks was renamed to Roblox in January 2004, being a play on the words robots and blocks. The name was also changed to Roblox due to Dinoblocks being a pretty clunky name. The public beta version of the game would be released in the middle of 2004, with the game being fully rolled out in September 2006. The first build that was found was a 2008 build of Roblox being found in 2012, but this was sadly at around the same time that Roblox removed all other versions from c5.roblox.com. More discoveries wouldn't come until 2015, when one of the developers named Clone Trooper 1019 released a GitHub repository from a late 2009 build And in 2016, a broken installer for the 2007 build was found. And then a year later, a broken installer was discovered, as well as a collection of screenshots from the 2006 build. The earliest build that's actually playable is a March 2007 client that was released in March of 2021 by an anonymous player of the game. And this build in specific is pretty noteworthy as it had various supported debug tools in it, such as the thumbnail generator, which was the function used to generate avatars and in-game thumbnails. And a lot of the original assets have also been found, along with the actual patent for Roblox that was filed in 2005, and the patent contains information detailing the thought process behind the creation of Roblox. And I'm going to read it out to you. The present invention pertains to a method and apparatus for building online games. In one embodiment, the method may include providing a user interface that facilitates user selection of parts and placing a set of parts selected by a user in a three-dimensional world. The method may also include joining parts within the set based on their proximity to each other in the 3D world to form one or more models for a game, and sending a model file for each of these models to a server via a network for use by various users. Larrikins. Larrikins is a Lost DreamWorks film that was in development from 2013 all the way to the middle of 2017. The movie was based on an original story written by screenwriter Harry Cribbs, which told the story of a bilby named Perry who leaves home alongside Red the kangaroo to travel across the Australian outback. The movie had actors like Hugh Jackman, with the film being slated for a February 2018 release, which would have made it the first DreamWorks animation movie to be distributed by Universal after Comcast acquired the studio in March of 2016. The movie was well into 4 years of its production when Tim Minchin announced on his personal blog that DreamWorks had cancelled Larrikins, but with the movie far into production, the team made a short film with the assets that they made for it called Bilby, named after the main character's species, premiering at the Annecy International Animated Film Festival in 2018. Studios like Netflix at one point tried to purchase the rights to the movie, but couldn't due to Universal making it non-viable for purchase, probably because of DreamWorks' commitment to Bilby. It's pretty disappointing that the movie ended up being cancelled, and according to one of the animators, the movie was 95% complete, with the entirety of the theatrical cut already making it past the storyboard stage. All they would have had to do was finish around 5 to 8 minutes of the unfinished animation. That was it. The closest thing we have to the finished movie are various animation reels uploaded by the animators starting in June of 2017. There's actually quite a lot of pieces from the movie that have been released by various different animators, as well as the film's art director, concept artists, and probably all of the core people involved in the movie's development. 1953 British Grand Prix. The 1953 British Grand Prix is special because it was the first Formula 1 race to be broadcasted on live television. The race was the 4th time that the British Grand Prix was held, and the event would bring more exposure than most F1 races at the time because the race was being broadcasted by the BBC, who was interested in televising the event. The BBC had broadcasted other sports for the first time as well, including football, cricket, and rugby, and they had a history of televising motor racing stretching all the way back to 1937. The Grand Prix in its entirety was broadcasted to a live audience, but the race wasn't fully recorded. The ability to record television already existed in the 1950s, but what the BBC ended up doing instead was only recording highlights from the race, with the rest of the 3-hour runtime being completely lost with really no way for it to be found. The only existing footage I could find comes from the British Patty, which is only around a minute in length. McLaren MP418. The McLaren MP418 is a Formula 1 car that was planned to be a revolutionary addition to Formula 1, being introduced in the 2003 season, but the car was never raced at all due to reliability and safety concerns, and the test footage of the car on the track has been completely lost in the process. There's plenty of pictures of the car on and off the track, but a major factor to the lack of footage could be because the testing sessions were private, preventing the media from getting any coverage of it. But another major factor could be that the car was simply too flawed to race, with an ex-McLaren mechanic named Mark Priestley going on a podcast and talking about a major incident potentially involving this car, with Mark recalling the incident as the biggest crash I have ever seen in my life, with the event also being captured on the CCTV cameras that were probably destroyed after the crash occurred. But regardless, no footage of this car has ever been released to the public, with the only existing media of it being pictures from when the car was being tested on the track. Pokémon Battle Aboard the St. Anne. When the Pokémon anime first came to the Western world, it was broadcasted in syndication. But before officially starting the series from the first episode, It was decided that a more exciting action-packed episode that ended in a cliffhanger would be used to first expose American audiences to the new sensation. So on September 7th, 1998, a day before the actual first episode aired, Battle Aboard the St. Anne was broadcasted to American audiences. In the beginning of the episode, the narrator announced that this was a special preview and at the end teased a cliffhanger, wondering if the heroes would escape the shipwreck that occurs at the end of the episode, and said that audiences would be able to see how Ash's journey began the next day in the episode. This version of the episode never aired after its initial broadcast, and no information was discovered about it until someone in the fan community named Squiggle McLamesprite found the preview of the first episode and put it up on Mega and Google Drive to be saved. And it wouldn't take long for re-uploads to appear all over YouTube as a result of the finding. Half-Life Return to Ravenholm. Return to Ravenholm was the working title of a cancelled Half-Life 2 spin-off developed by Arcane Studios from 2006 to 2007. The player takes the returning role of Adrian Shepard from Half-Life Opposing Force on a trip to a zombie-infested European town called Ravenholm. It was planned to take place after the events of Half-Life 2, but before the end of Half-Life 2 Episode 2. The project was eventually cancelled by Valve, and this was a huge blow because of just how emotionally invested the developers were in the project. And in the following years, some assets and images related to the project surfaced online, with the majority of them being in-game screenshots, as well as sketches and many different models that were used inside of the game. The first pictures of the game wouldn't start showing up until January of 2013, with only more and more things being released with the more time that had passed. And fast forward to May of 2020, a YouTube channel called NoClip released a documentary about Arcane Studios' projects, and the video provided almost all of the known information about the game at the time, but there was still no gameplay footage anywhere on the internet. And I guess NoClip seemed to notice that, since they later ended up releasing over an hour of actual gameplay in May of 2022. And so I guess you could say that the game has been partially found, as it's still not accessible to the public. Okay, well that's all of Layer 1. So like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, this iceberg is ridiculously long, so I'm going to see how this video does, and I think that that'll determine if I make a part 2 to this, but the current plan for the series is that I make 1 video per tier, which would total out to 8 videos, and then combine them all together and upload that as a finished result. I don't know though, because like some of the tiers might be small enough for me to do 2 in 1 video. I mean, like maybe some of them at like the very bottom, if small enough, I might just combine them, so maybe it's like 7 or 6 parts. But we'll see. We'll see how big those tiers are. I haven't even read them yet, actually. But I already know it's going to be worthy enough to talk about, if I can even talk about it. But again, I'm going to see how this video does before I begin pumping out the script for part 2. So if that becomes something that people would want to see, then I'll absolutely make a part 2 to this. So just let me know in the comments. Also, you should totally consider subscribing. Okay, bye-bye.